Whitetails from scratch. We've had a ton of success on this property from several different big mature whitetails, a lot of turkeys, a lot of habitat projects. Where we left off last was our logging project on the Oak Roost side of the property. And then we found that big mature buck called Peyton. So, he died of that winter. It was very extremely cold that winter. He died. And then heading past that season, that's when we're gonna update you now. So spring of 2023, we lost the biggest mature buck on the property due to that winter kill, Peyton. So it's kind of just like what's left to hunt, what is the age structure of the bucks around here? How's the habitat looking? What does that logging, how are the impacts of that logging project? And just heading into the future, how can we design the property, improve the property, and have more success? So we're shed hunting, and right now, the property's holding just a lot of middle-aged 3.5-year-old bucks. And this property holds a lot of deer over the winter because we have all of this late season food we put in. We leave standing corn, standing beans. We got our late season brassica plots. So we do attract a lot of deer late season, which results in quite a few sheds in the spring. So, the bucks that we know have survived, a buck called Clayton, a buck we call Patches, a buck we call Primetime, and then a couple other nice bucks in that 3-year-old range, one we call Viking. And maybe even one that we call The Beast, who showed up as what we believe is a 3-year-old. I mean, these are awesome looking, great genetic bucks. We found some of the sheds of these bucks, some of the core bucks of the area, Patches, we found his set. And then one of the more mature bucks left is a buck that we call Primetime, and we found one of his antlers over on the top of a ridge in Oak Roost. So the summer of 2023, we have this great bedding area now with the new logging. We've attracted a lot of new bucks, and now it's time to create a plan for the fall. So food plots, food plot architecture, these small kill plots, putting those in, water holes, scrapes, the cell cameras, the trails, the access. We're working on all that throughout the summer. We're trying to get him to that 5-year-old range or older. And right now it's just one buck we call Primetime. He's a 5.5-year-old buck. And that's the one we're targeting this fall. We have multiple years of sheds of this buck, so we have a really good idea of what his age is. He's really mature. He's pushing off a lot of the other 4-year-olds. Does not have a super high scoring rack, but he's using the property. He's a core buck. He's consistent, and heading into a drought season where we didn't get a lot of rain, that water hole was key.
So 2023 was my first really successful and fruitful year out here on the farm. I had a really early season encounter with a buck we called Primetime. Now how this kind of all just played out and how the situation arose was because of the things we were doing on the farm. We have some water sources, some transitional food sources close to bedding areas, where the deer can kind of get up. They have those, the water and the food, and it's on their way to transition out to bigger ag. So it was early, a very hot fall, and it was like 80-some degrees out there. So these deer weren't getting up and moving very far right away. They were just kind of getting up, they wanted to get some water, and that was key. So allow us to get that pattern on Primetime. I was able to go in and I was able to harvest them within the first few weeks of the season. So there was a lot of significant details that had a crucial impact on this hunt and how it played out. We have it all on the hunt breakdown for Primetime. It's on our YouTube channel. Go ahead and check it out.
So we're all just super excited for Chris. This is his first buck on the Whitetails from Scratch property. We had a couple in the past. I shot Skyscraper. My dad shot Little Splitter. And it was really Chris's turn. So he stepped up, got the job done on a great 5-year-old buck. Just really happy for him. So after Chris shot Primetime, there were not a lot of really upper end mature bucks. So, there's a handful of deer that we're trying to watch and see if they can make it through this next season, what they turn into, how much growth they have. Patches is the core buck. We got a big 8 that's on the property. And then there's a couple other really nice bucks. One's real wide. The neighbor's been calling him Uppercut. And a few other bucks we have our eyes on. And heading into the spring, this was kind of a weird year. We didn't have a lot of snow depth, so deer could find food pretty much anywhere. So when we had all this late season food, That does really well in winters with a lot of deep snow. We attract a lot of deer because the food is not accessible in most areas. Now this season there was not a lot of snow. It was kind of a mild winter, and deer were very spread out, so it's hard to find sheds. A lot of big bucks, even talking with the neighbors, we couldn't find any of their sheds. They could pretty much drop anywhere out in big fields and you just can't find them. So not a lot of sheds, but we did find a couple core sheds, which were key coming into next season. Patches and one side to this big 8. And the cool thing about this property and all the changes we're making is we're seeing the turkey population just explode. So the hinge cuts we did a few years ago, the logging efforts, all these little thickets, the big switchgrass planting is looking real good, and just a lot of edge feathering and a lot of habitat for nesting is also very important to the overall wildlife on the property. We're seeing winter flocks over 100 turkeys at times on these standing egg fields during the winter. And heading into the spring, it's looking really good. And one of our favorite spots to hunt is a place we call IMAX. And it didn't disappoint. We had 7 big toms come strutting in. Everything you dream of as a turkey hunter, just seeing that big a group of toms coming in full strut, working the field, working the decoys, and then finally putting an arrow through one. And through the summer of 2024, there's just a lot of smaller habitat projects. So we're really letting all that logging mature, all those new plants starting to pop up in that area. It's creating great bedding. We're checking out the switchgrass, that's looking good. And we're just kind of monitoring things. So no real big projects other than food plot implementation, trying some new things, planting corn, soybeans, tried some sunflowers and things like that. Just experimenting more than anything. No real huge big projects, more hunting strategy and just trying to optimize and manage these little micro plots and micro systems for hunting in the fall. And something really neat happened in the fall of 2024. That buck that we call Patches, he shows back up in the summer and he stays on the property all summer long. We're watching him grow, getting great trail camera video of him. And Patches really takes over, but he kind of shifts his range and takes over a very far east side of the property. And it was almost a daily daylight movement by this buck. Very cool. And we're gonna get after him. My dad's up to bat. He's going for Patches.
So I took my second buck off the property last season. This is a deer. When we first got the property, started making our initial changes, we identified this buck called Patches because he had 2 patches on him. He was a big part of why we made changes and infrastructure changes on this land. And watching how Patches adapted to the changes that we did had a huge impact on our success. Not just for, me being able to harvest him, but for, in general, how to hunt the property and how to set it up. It was great. We could learn how he was utilizing food. Literally, this became his home and he lived his entire life on this property. So to finally get him to age and be able to harvest him was just an extremely fulfillment and emotional hunt for me. And I'll never forget it.
So this is our 4th mature buck down on the property since we've had it, the Whitetails from Scratch property. Couldn't be more excited. And after my dad shot Patches, it's really all eyes on the big 8 is one of the targets, along with another buck called Uppercut. So 2 mature bucks. Once we got Patches out of here, they really felt comfortable, started to move in, make this their home core area. And that's what all this habitat improvement, management, and strategy does, is when you can remove a big buck, other big bucks have a tendency to kind of fill in. And as we've seen in the past, our property actually improves throughout the season because of all the work we put in with our food plots, primetime system, the easy greens, late season food and water holes, and all the strategies. So this big mature buck we just called a big 8, he's starting to show up and be more daylight active in December.
So then coming into the 2024 season, there was really 3 major deer on the property that we were kind of after, or at least had our eye on. One was Patches, the other one was a buck we named Warthog from the sound and how he acted. Warthog, he was very consistent on the property. He was kind of a bully buck running around. Right when gun season kicked off, our neighbor was able to harvest him successfully, so, another deer off list. So it really just left the big 8, and, he was a really nice, big frame deer. Really got you excited. He wasn't super consistent, but he was here, at least once every week or every 2 weeks on the cameras, or we'd see him and have an interaction with him. Season got really late, wasn't having too high of hopes, but again, because of all the work we put on the property, that food source, that bedding, that late season draw when they're just trying to get on food and they're just trying to, survive throughout the rest of the winter, it's really, appealing to them to come here because they have everything they need to get through that winter and to replenish after the rut. And, he started to make his home here. He got consistent here, and just so happened out on a doe hunt, he come walking in, surprised us, and I was able to get a shot on him, and another successful year for me.
So Chris got the job done on the buck we call Big 8. I mean, this thing's very impressive. Much larger buck than we thought when we got him in our hands, and pretty cool deer. And this spring is really no different than the past. Now we're thinking full-time habitat projects. What can we do now to improve what we've done in the past? And as I mentioned before, part of the management for the whitetails is improving wildlife as a whole. So the turkey numbers are just continuing to grow and be more successful out here on the property. And this is the first time ever all 3 of us tagged out on the Whitetails from Scratch property.
So when it comes to the Whitetails from Scratch property, it's far beyond creating a world-class hunting property and hunting and stuff like that. The inspiration of reaching a goal of having a piece of property at, as great as this one, with all the different elements in it, it just goes far beyond the hunting. What it's done for our family, bringing our family together in a place that most people don't get that opportunity. I mean, we're coming here, we're sharing this property, we're having experiences, life experiences. We have this great asset, this bountiful wildlife, outdoor thing. With the fulfillment is just, I can't even put it into words what it means to me.
We're starting to work as a management system with a couple different neighbors, and just the management as a whole is really paying off for not only us, but the neighbors here. And then we're also gonna implement some new water sources here and try the new deer ponds. Deer ponds are gonna be a big part of this summer strategy and shifting into the fall of 2025. There's also another project we're gonna kick off, and we're excited to show that one in the future.